I'm breathing underwater, I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater.
As we know, Irwin Allen created several of the most iconic shows of the 20th century. We've looked at several of them: Time Tunnel, Land of the Giants, and of course Lost in Space. He started on that role with Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which ran for 4 seasons. It premiered in 1962 when I was 9. My family never missed it. I could recite the opening with them, especially
starring Richard Basehart, David Edison.
As far as anything else they might have done, the names meant nothing to me. One of them was named David. That was good enough for me. Hey, I was 9. But I knew they meant a cool adventure on an even cooler submarine. What I didn't know until I started poking around to find information about the show for my reviews was the series was based on a feature film of the same name. It appeared in 1961 and featured Walter Pidgeon as Admiral Nelson. The cast included major stars such as Peter Lorre, Joan Fontaine, Barbara Eden, and Michael Ansara. Oh yes, and one other big star.
Come with me, come with me on a voyage to the bottom of the sea.
If you're old enough to know, yes, that's Frankie Avalon singing our theme song. He's also a prominent member of the cast. He was one of the major teenage heartthrobs who kept young girls swooning all through the 1950s. His smooth, sexy singing voice and his incredible good looks earned him all the fame he could handle as he cranked out various records. His best known as Venus, which pretty well put him on the map. Not bad for a kid who got his start playing trumpet on the Jackie Gleason show. Around the time this film was made, he was moving away from music and into acting. As we'll see, he was equally good at that and turned in a nice performance here. As we go along, we'll look at some of the other people, but we're starting with him because, well,
in a sea of blue-green, we will find love at the bottom of the sea.
because he's the first one we encounter. Granted, we don't see him, but since right now we're pretty much only interested in those silken tones, we don't really need to. Every person on that boat just banged their head on something, and anything that wasn't battened down is now somewhere else. You're not supposed to do wheelies in a submarine. We open with a series of headlines in various languages, hailing the launch of America's most advanced submarine and its arrival at the North Pole.
The unpredictable Admiral Harriman Nelson has done it again. His brainchild, a fantastic atomic submarine with an amazing glass nose, is now undergoing final test below the ice at the North Pole.
Why the North Pole? That's classified. We don't need to know.
To sit in judgment on the final test, the Bureau of Marine Exploration has sent a seaplane with its top officer, the former Vice Admiral B.J. Crawford, to rendezvous with the submarine Seaview in the Arctic.
B.J. and Nelson are old friends, and B.J. has been a cheerleader for this project from the beginning. He may be a little biased.
Flying with him is the congressional watchdog of the budget, penny-pinching Congressman Llewellyn Parker, who had fought a losing fight against what he had termed Nelson's folly.
Tell us what you really think of him. The expression penny pincher is falling out of use, probably because pennies are doing the same thing. In the most recent slang that I know of, we'd call him a tight ass.
Will the final test on the USOS Seaview turn it into Nelson's folly, or will it be another triumph of a great man, a great inventor, who, despite his oddball reputation, may yet emerge as the predominant scientific genius of our time?
Remember when newscasters were totally unbiased and objective in their reporting? Whatever became of that?
So, bon voyage, Admiral Nelson. Good luck, Seaview.
Well, gentlemen, modesty forbids my adding anything to that.
Not to mention he misplaced his thesaurus.
Shall we take her down, Captain?
Aye, aye, sir.
Let's make it 90 feet at the start, huh?
Aye, sir.
He decided to honk the horn because he saw some kids outside going like this. That's Captain Crane. He's technically in command of the boat, although the Admiral is in charge of the overall operation. That relationship continued into the series, and I always found it confusing. Again, I was 9. We watch a long diving sequence. We watch the Seaview glide through the water at about a 30-degree angle, and nobody inside has to hang on to anything, and we're not supposed to notice that. Inside the boat, there's some diplomacy to be done.
We've got some guests to entertain. I've met them. Now it's your turn. And just remember, they hold the purse strings to this folly of ours.
I couldn't deprive you of that expression. Let's see it again.
We've got some guests to entertain. I've met them. Now it's your turn. And just remember, they hold the purse strings to this folly of ours.
He looks like somebody shoved a pine cone up his goozix. That's Robert Sterling. His amazing good looks got him some good movie roles during the 40s, though he took time off to serve in World War II. After the war, though, roles were drying up. In 1951, he married his second wife, actress Anne Jeffries. They put a stage act together that was successful enough to get them noticed by Hollywood again. As a result, they landed the roles of Marion and George Kirby, the two ghosts that haunted Topper from 1953 to 1955. The show made them a comedic success, and they were in demand as a team for quite some time afterward. Shortly after he made this film, he pretty much retired from acting and went into various businesses. He and Ms. Jeffries remained married until his death in 2006 at the age of 88. She outlived him by 11 years and died in 2017, age 94. Let's see that expression one more time.
We've got some guests to entertain. I've met them. Now it's your turn. And just remember, they hold the purse strings to this folly of ours.
It's often been said that the best-looking people can make the most horrible faces. I think we just saw evidence of that. Into the observation dome on the nose of the boat, where we meet BJ, Dr. Hiller, and, of course, the congressman.
You have an expensive toy here, Admiral, though it is suitable for sightseeing.
Yes, and we brought you on board because we could use a barber. The last time we saw Howard McNear was in Honey West, but almost everybody from my generation knows him as Floyd the Barber on the Andy Griffith Show. He landed that gig right around the time that he made this and stayed with it until shortly before his death. During the show's run, he had a massive stroke, and his ability to move was severely limited, so directors had to get a little creative in how they filmed him. Needless to say, it worked. The stroke finally took him from us in 1969. He was only 63. But right now, he's anything but the friendly barber.
Research project, isn't it?
That's right.
The reaction of crewmen under conditions of lengthy confinement?
Yes, Admiral, and I appreciate the honor of being the only woman aboard.
But you're not. We have another one. You'll meet her. Shall we see the rest of the ship?
Well, I did think that was the purpose of our visit.
How dare the Admiral be polite and acknowledge that there are other dignitaries on the boat besides you, Congressman? Shameful. We get a tour of the control room, and then we move on to the world's only underwater aquarium where they can study various sea creatures. Right now, Commander Lucius Emery is shark walking. I'll let him explain what that is.
My little friend Bessie here, we have to drug her in order to do some tests. Now I'm trying to force some water through her gills so she doesn't drown.
I hope I don't need to introduce Peter Lorre. He was a Hollywood standard throughout his career, and everybody wanted to do his voice. If you want to see more of him, watch Casablanca.
You've seen the brain of the sub. In here is the heart, the atomic motor room. Careful, sir. That's our warning system.
Disregard.
No one is allowed in there, not even congressmen.
Only an idiot would want to go in there. That's where the atomic pile is. Oh, that's what they called a reactor core in 1961. Whatever you call it, don't open that door. Move on to the weapons room where they keep the atomic missiles, the torpedoes, and lots of other stuff. There's also a mini-sub in here. It's a two-man job and it's strictly bare bones. The operators have to wear scuba gear while they're in it because there's not much air. It has some tools like a torch in its nose, but it doesn't carry any weapons.
Well, here's something new. This is a magnetic primer. In case we lose power in the control room, we just slap this dude on by hand and away she goes.
This looks like a pineapple.
Some pineapple, one bite and pow. Well, don't worry, it can't activate itself.
There are reasons why he showed us those two items, but we don't know it yet.
PJ, take a look at this lad. He's Seaman Smith. Recognize him?
Should I?
Seems only yesterday you were bouncing him on your knees.
Smith? Old Bricktop's boy. Spitting image of him, too.
His mother wrote me that he'd finished his hitch in the Navy, so I had him sign up with us on the double.
Well, he looks a little big for me to bounce on my knee now.
Yeah.
Jimmy, isn't it? Yes, sir.
He operates that mini-sub. It's kind of his baby.
How do you like the new model?
Oh, she handles like a dream, sir. I can't wait to test her under the ice.
You will. Good luck, my boy.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry to break in on your social life. Back to work.
Excuse me, but when an admiral wants to bounce you on his knee, you stop what you're doing and pay attention.
This should interest you, Doctor. Dr. Jameson, Dr. Hiller, Congressman Parker.
How do you do?
Happy to meet you, Congressman. Thank you. The Dr. Hiller? Well, it's a pleasure to welcome such a distinguished psychiatrist aboard.
You flatter me. You seem very well equipped here and pleasantly unoccupied.
Well, we're hoping to keep it that way.
The best kind of sick bay is an empty one. It means everybody's okay. I remember an episode of MASH where they needed a better floor, so they poured themselves a concrete one. They asked Father Mulcahy to bless it, and he said, best I can remember, Lord, bless this floor. May it be used as little as possible. My wife is a hospice nurse. In case you're not sure what that is, basically she helps people die. She provides care and comfort during the final stages and moments of life. It's always nice when she has one of those rare days where there's nothing to do. Dr. Jameson hands out radiation badges. It's green right now. If it loses color, you've been exposed to radiation, and if it's red, bend over, put your head between your knees, and you know the rest. They catch up with the two admirals. BJ is actually a vice admiral, but two admirals is easier to say, and the tour can continue. What's next? I don't think that's what anybody expected. There's Frankie Avalon, and I can tell by his fingers that he's really playing that. As I said, he started out as a trumpeter, and obviously he's kept his chops up. He's doing a nice job of entertaining the boys. She's doing an even better job of entertaining the boys. Barbara Eden is still acting to this very day, though some of the work she gets is reprising her role as Jeannie. In 1961, she was well established in Hollywood, having done guest parts on such obscure shows as Gunsmoke, Perry Mason, and I Love Lucy. She was also well known as a singer, cut an album, and did the nightclub circuit every now and then. So it's not surprising that she can dance like that, too.
Well, Admiral, I suppose she's your dancing dietitian, and he's your musical chef.
She is my secretary, and as for him...
Sorry, I'm to blame, sir. I started it all.
I have no doubt of that. Doctor, I told you another woman was aboard, but I hardly expected you to meet her under such boisterous circumstances.
Dr. Hiller thinks it's delightful. The men are happy and well-adjusted, so why not? The Admiral and the Captain aren't so observant.
Mr. Romano, belay that noisy horn. As for you, Miss Connors, we shall have a little talk later. Doctor?
She's the Admiral's secretary, Kathy Connors. He's Lieutenant Danny Romano. He does all kinds of stuff. Besides play the trumpet, I mean.
I'll have a little talk now, Lieutenant, outside. Romano, aren't you about due back on duty?
Not for another 2 minutes yet, sir.
One of the things he does is stretch the rules to the limit. In the hall, the captain says, "How do you explain this behavior?"
I was just showing them how I'll dance at my wedding.
I see. Well, that is an extenuating circumstance. In about 3 weeks, isn't it?
And 2 days and 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. Who's the unlucky man?
Yes, they're engaged, but around the men we must maintain a dignified posture.
Pardon me, Captain. May I?
By all means, Lieutenant.
Dignity. Always dignity.
It's time to head under the ice. We get more footage of the sea view traveling through the water, and I'm going to pause here and address something. If you've looked through the IMDb list of goofs for this movie, you saw one that talked about the air bubbles coming off the back of the boat. This person said if they were losing that much air, they'd suffocate. But they aren't losing anything. Those bubbles are the result of what's known as cavitation. I don't understand all the physics of it, but if you want to see it in action, put your hand in a big bucket of water and waggle your fingers real fast. Notice the bubbles that form. That's cavitation. The bubbles are the result of the Seaview's drive system stirring up the water. The fact that the directors included that little detail tells me they were trying to look as real as possible. The two women are having a chit-chat during some downtime.
Bought a small ranch in Colorado.
What do you read? Can't make it out, Captain.
Iceberg, sir?
Well, no. Nose camera.
Camera on.
Except they only got to chit, never made it to chat. Those are chunks of ice. Why are they falling? Ice floats. Those pieces had to have come off one of the big ice floes at the pole, and the floes are floating. So why aren't the pieces floating? It doesn't matter right now. They're kind of beating the boat to a pulp.
Take it to 1,000.
Take it to 1,000 feet, emergency.
Ice chunks can only sink to 900 feet. Everybody knows that. So they should be safe at 1,000. Even better, get out from under whatever is shedding those things. They'll need to surface and examine the damage. Good thing they have polar coats.
My God. Sky's on fire.
The short version? The Van Allen belts are bands of radiation, or more precisely, excited particles that help keep the solar wind from blowing our atmosphere away and suffocating us. There are two of them at different altitudes, and according to this story, a meteor hit something just right and ignited the belts. The basic idea is that there's enough hydrogen gas in them to produce fire, even though nobody's explaining where the oxygen comes from. It can't come from the atmosphere because the belts are way above that. Thing is, in 1961, we had only known about the Van Allen belts for about 3 years, and what we did know was precious little. So as far as the average viewer was concerned, this was a possibility. That's the issue we run into when we watch these older movies and shows. We're 60 years into their future, and we've learned more than these guys could ever conceive. To watch something like this fairly, we have to put ourselves back there in the age of discovery when we were only just starting to find out about these things and didn't have any idea what they were made of. Hey, when the belts were first discovered, a lot of scientists thought they made space travel impossible because no human could survive going through them. We got past that too. But in the era that this movie was made, we hadn't done that yet. Yuri Gagarin had gone into space, but he stayed well below the Van Allen belts. Likewise for Alan Shepard. We did eventually learn that they're not that lethal, and it's possible to shield against them, but that's a long way down the road from where we are with the Seaview. And they have more important things to think about than what science will be like in 60 years, because the whole world is burning. Admiral Nelson goes below to try and call Washington and find out what's going on. Whatever this thing is, it's causing huge magnetic storms that are making communication sketchy at best. Captain Crane stayed on top, scanning the area with his binoculars. He's found something.
Rescue team, up and out on the double. Man on the ice. Belay the Parkers.
Rescue team, topside, on the double.
More precisely, someone. It's a good thing they found him when they did, because he wouldn't have lasted much longer. It's touch and go for the doctor for a bit, but he gets the man stabilized. Back in the radio room, Sparks has finally gotten through to Washington.
What's the forecast?
We just don't know. The UN has called an emergency scientific conference. It's working around the clock. The world's top brains are there. Pitar, Zuko, Charbier, and the president wants you there on the double.
Watching him wander around this boat showing it to his guests, it's easy to forget that he's one of the top scientific minds in the world.
Can you send a plane for me?
Impossible. Thermal conditions have grounded all aircraft. There's nothing flying anywhere in the world. The temperature has reached 135 degrees, and there's no way of knowing how much hotter it will get. Dewline headquarters just below the pole reports the polar ice caps are melting.
Okay, Bergen, we're on our way. Be there in 2 days.
Godspeed. Out.
He had that pipe through the whole boat, so everybody knows the score and what their next move is. How about our survivor?
Jim, can you hear me? Mark, you there? Mark.
There must be others still out there on that ice.
This is the captain.
Reverse course. Repeat. Reverse course. Rescue team, stand by.
This is Admiral Nelson. Hold your course.
That's going to start a little rift between the captain and the admiral. And the captain isn't the only one.
Sir, I didn't know there was a regulation about not picking up survivors.
I'm going to throw in a spoiler right here. This is not an action-adventure movie. This is a character study of Admiral Nelson. The main focus will be on the Admiral, his decisions, and the repercussions thereof. We'll watch how the people around him react, and especially Captain Crane, but it all comes back to the Admiral. Keep that in mind when you watch the movie. You'll get a lot more out of it.
The chances are no one's still alive out there anyway.
He was still alive, wasn't he?
The Admiral is more concerned about keeping the whole world alive. He's been huddled up with Lucius and BJ for over 24 hours doing calculations. And he's finally got something.
It checks. It checks on the nose. Lucius, I think we've hit it.
Oh, you're always so sure of everything.
If the temperature maintains the same rate of progression, yes, if. And if we can reach there by the 29th?
29? It has to be the 29.
And projected exactly 16 hours? BJ, it's right. I don't see how we can miss.
And he'd better hurry because things are getting worse. Forest fires everywhere, and this.
Fiery sky is now threatening to strike a mortal blow at the heart of the Midwest Farm Belt. Thousands of acres of vital grain have already shriveled under the intense heat, giving rise to fears of famine if the flaming belt continues to rage on.
I wonder how much Irwin Allen had to pay to get the rights to Grapes of Wrath.
Here now, our television satellite camera in outer space, showing the frightening ring of fire encircling the Earth.
Never mind Grapes of Wrath, how much did it cost that TV station to put a camera on the moon? We see the Seaview arrive in New York, apparently steaming up the East River. Looks kind of different, doesn't it? The World Trade Center hadn't been built yet. The Empire State Building was the tallest building around. The UN building was 10 years old. It really was a different world.
Excitement has been at fever pitch since last night's radio report from the submarine Seaview that the Admiral had conceived a plan which hopefully might extinguish the flaming Van Allen belt. Now, several theories are already under consideration by the UN. In fact, yesterday, Dr. Zuko, the eminent physicist of Vienna, presented his own plan.
To put it in deep, technical, scientific terms, his plan is do nothing. Let it burn itself out. He doesn't think it'll take that long. The question is, what's left when it finally does burn itself out, if it does? Admiral Nelson has a better idea.
When a diseased appendage threatens the life of a human body, a doctor has no choice but to amputate. We have no choice either. We must amputate the belt or die.
Amputate? How?
Not with a knife, Doctor, but with a shot in the heart. The burning belt must be exploded clear of the Earth's magnetic field.
But we can't just do this anywhere, anytime.
The shot must take place on August the 29th at exactly 4 p.m. The location of this operation is as vital as the time. A place 205 miles northwest of Guam in the Marianas Islands.
And what are we hitting it with?
An atomic missile, Doctor, fired from the submarine Seaview. The missile will arc along the burning belt. As it detonates, it will seed the flames with an overdose of radiation, causing the belt to explode outward into space. To simplify it, take a toy balloon. A little too much air and poof, no balloon.
You can probably guess what the other scientists think of that.
A little too much radiation and poof,
No word!
They'll shout him down before he can present any evidence. They're all led by that guy with the pointy beard who apparently is a big deal of some kind.
Insanity! Insanity! This lunatic scheme will destroy us all.
What exactly do you think is happening right now, Doctor?
Gentlemen, care to look at our figures?
The Admiral's scheme is suicidal insanity. You should know that, Commodore. Explode the belt and you explode the world.
Not if the blast is directed away from us.
No, no, no!
Is that your carefully calculated scientific opinion, or do you have issues with the table? Without even looking at the Admiral's data, he whips the whole room into such a frenzy that the Admiral and his friends may have to be escorted out by security for their own protection.
I'm not going to wait and watch the world burn to a crisp. I have 16 days to get to the Marianas, and I shall need every ounce of speed and every precious moment of time. Lucius, have the captain stand by to get underway.
Especially since he just told them all he doesn't care what they think. He's doing this with or without their approval.
Refer to committee. No. I say again, about the Admiral's scheme be referred to committee.
There's no time.
Then I call a vote. All those in favor of the Admiral's scheme? Aye. All those against? No!
I don't think he's listening, Doctor, and I'm not sure you grasp what he just said.
Not mine, yours. My answer shall come only from the President of the United States.
He just said the UN is basically a useless operation with zero authority over anybody or anything, so keep ranting and screaming. He's got work to do and you can't stop him.
Cast off, clear the deck.
Those aren't cops or soldiers, they're UN security. They're as effective as the overall organization is.
Crash dive. What? You heard me, crash dive.
Well, the UN police on deck. A crash dive will kill them.
Give them a 15-second warning to clear off and then dive. That's an order.
According to what I've been able to find, where they're at in the East River, a crash dive will take them to about 30 feet, which may not even cover the whole boat. The cops will manage to swim to safety, don't worry about them. Worry more about the bottom of the hull scraping the bottom of the river. Captain Crane has several questions.
Sir. Oh, forget it, Lee. Military police swim like fish. It's part of their training.
Is it now?
Miles under. Decks awash. Stern gone.
I guess that one guy swims like a buffalo sculpin. They live on the ocean floor. The Admiral is more concerned about their course and how they're going to get from New York to the Marianas Trench in 16 days. If the Panama Canal was up and running, it'd be easy, but it's not. The heat and all the rest has damaged it to the point where it's unusable. That leaves going around South America. Why they don't go back up north and go into the pole, I do not know, because that would be way faster than going down around the Cape. But for reasons I can't fathom, nautical term, see what I did there? It'll never come up.
We'll make it if we get the President's permission. Captain, set your course for the Marianas as though we already had that permission. And give us all the speed you can make.
Sir.
Captain.
Very well, sir.
They'll never get presidential permission, not because the president is opposed to the plan, but because the action in the belts is creating so much electromagnetic interference they can't get through to the president to ask. They'll get brief contacts with places like London and Hawaii, but the signal always breaks off before they can say anything significant.
Ah, Doctor, Mr. Alvarez, I'd forgotten you two were still aboard.
My orders did not include a trip to the Marianas or wherever you're headed, Admiral. I must get off the submarine.
There may be no chance to get into port, Doctor. I'm afraid you'll both have to go along for the ride.
Her project is studying the effects of stress on the men during prolonged confinement. Well, Doctor, welcome to the perfect laboratory for your experiment, whether you want it or not.
Glad to see you up and about, Mr. Alvarez. Sorry you didn't get ashore, but I'm sure we'll be able to find something to keep you busy.
Don't worry about me, Admiral. Man must accept what is ordained.
I don't like the sound of that. They don't need a fatalist going around bringing the crew down. If you don't recognize Michael Ansara, I have to wonder where you've been all your life. He was puttering around Hollywood doing bit parts in movies and TV and making a name for himself. But he hit the jackpot in 1956 when he landed the role of Cochise in the series Broken Arrow. He was so impressive there, he pretty well didn't lack for work the rest of his life. While he was doing Broken Arrow, somebody at 20th Century Fox set him up on a date with a beautiful young actress. It wasn't long before they were married. Her name? Barbara Eden, the Admiral's secretary. They divorced in 1974 after 26 years. Given my own history, I can't say much about that. It happens. Star Trek fans will recognize Kang, a role he played in 3 different Star Trek series, the original series, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. We saw him in the Time Tunnel and I forget how many other shows, and it's always a pleasure to watch him in action.
Now, I'll say it again, loudmouth. You talk pretty big. Behind the Admiral's back.
Yeah? Well, here's a message for you. Special delivery.
Oh, Dr. Hiller, I found some stress for you to study. The captain will come in and break it up, and while the men are asking questions, Sparks has gotten something on the radio coming out of Miami.
And the news from Paris is just as disastrous. The rising water of the Seine is overrun its banks, flooding out thousands of homes in the low-lying areas. In China and India, conditions are chaotic as riots and pestilence sweep the land. Other reports indicate that steaming water from the melting north and south poles are being sucked into the air currents, spreading weird, freakish fog banks throughout the world. In many areas, dense fog severely hampers vital operations. The blistering heat continues to blaze a path of destruction across the Midwest grain belt. The rich farmland of America is now almost a wasteland.
Basically, the world we know has already been destroyed. But why did it stop so suddenly?
Sparks, did we lose contact?
No, sir. The Admiral ordered and used blackout.
He's a little late. It's a really bad move to let it run and give the men a little information like that and then cut them off from more. If he really wanted a news blackout, he should have told Captain Crane before he ever piped that stuff throughout the boat. I have to be honest, the Admiral may be one of the smartest people on the planet, but when he's not doing brilliant science, he's a jerk. As for the captain, let's put it this way. Kathy knows her boyfriend very well, and she knows what he's going to do.
Lee!
It's a matter of common decency. The men are worried sick about their families. They have a right to know the facts, good or bad.
Lee, come have a cup of coffee.
I don't want any coffee.
Please! Now, you know the Admiral as well as I do, and we've never known him to be wrong on a question of policy.
Even if it ruins morale?
Well, that's just what he hopes to avoid.
He has a strange way of showing it.
Again, if he wants to keep the men's morale up with a news blackout, he's too late. They already heard too much for that to work. But speaking of morale...
There may be some here whose friends and loved ones have already gone to meet their Maker. If it is God's will that they and we shall die, so be it. A joyous reunion can be only a brief moment away.
That's enough, Mr. Alvarez. That's more than enough.
He's decided that everything was preordained before the foundation of the world, as the expression goes, and his little lectures about it aren't doing anything for that morale we were discussing. My dad had a wonderful way of describing such people's belief. What will be, even if it never comes to pass. Crane doesn't need that. He needs men who are willing to do whatever it takes to survive and help their loved ones survive. Alvarez does not fit that description. Despite Kathy's objections, he confronts the Admiral. And we'll see how that confrontation goes next time in part 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.
I'm breathing underwater, I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater.
They put a stage act together that into various businesses. I can say businesses. I hope I don't need to endure. Okay. She provides care, did the nightclub circuit every now and then. I'm thank you. Knows him as Floyd. Good grief. Speak, boo-boo.